In this video, we are going to focus on factoring trinomials when a is not 1 using two different ways. We're going to use the AC method, and I'm also going to show you how to factor this using the slip and slide method. So let's go ahead and factor this using the procedure up here given to you. So we're going to go through this step by step. So step 1 is to find the product of A and C. So that's step number 1. It's pretty easy. Find A times C. Okay, so step 2 is to find the factors of AC whose sum is B. So we have to come up with two numbers that when we multiply it, we get 30. But when we add the two numbers, it comes out to what B is, which is negative 11. Okay, so A times C is 30, and then B is negative 11. So let's come up with the two numbers. Say if we go 5 times 6, well, 5 times 6 is 30, but 5 plus 6 is positive 11, so that's no good. How about we try negative 5 and negative 6? Well, negative 5 times negative 6 is positive 30. And then when you take negative 5 plus negative 6, that comes out to negative 11. And there you have it, exactly the same as B. And that's what we need to come up with for step 2. So this is what we need from step 2 to move on to step 3. Now step 3 is to rewrite the trinomial as polynomial with 4 terms using these factors of AC. 4 terms. So that means 2x squared. We keep the 2x squared. We replace negative 11x with the two numbers, and that's negative 5x minus 6x. And it doesn't matter what order you put this in. You can go negative 6x minus 5x. Okay, that's okay too. And then we bring down to 15. Okay, so that's step 3. Rewrite the trinomial with 4 terms with the given two factors you found. Okay, so that's step 3. Step 4 is to factor this 4-term polynomial by grouping. Okay, and then you're gonna have to group the first 2 terms, so we're gonna factor this by grouping. So first 2 terms and then last 2 terms. So you break this up into 2 groups. Okay, and you can check it to see if you're able to factor this by grouping by checking the coefficients of it. So here the coefficients is what, negative 5 over 2. And then here you got 15 over negative 6. And you reduce that to negative 5 over 2. So yeah, they have the ratio of this expression is the same as this expression. So yeah, you can go ahead and use the use grouping to factor. If you still need help on how to factor by grouping, I have a video on my channel that you can go back and review. Okay, it tells you step by step of how to do it. Okay, so let's go on and complete this by grouping. So, looking at the first group, you have to pull out greatest common factor. So what's your greatest common factor between 2x squared minus 5x? Well, you can only pull out an x. Okay, x your greatest common factor. If you pull out an x, x times what give you 2x squared? Or x times 2x. Okay. And then x times what give you negative 5x, and that would be 5. Okay, so take out greatest common factor. Same thing over here with the negative 6x plus 15. What is the greatest common factor? Greatest common factor is negative 3. You can pull out negative 3. Negative 3 goes into negative 6x is 2x. And then negative 3 goes into 15 5 times. Okay. Now, you can check to see if you're on the right track by looking at the binomial. So if you have the same binomial, so here we have 2x minus 5, and here we have 2x minus 5. So yeah, they're the same. So you're good to go. So now to finish this up, okay, we would take out the binomial. So that's your common factor. So we're going to pull that out, 2x minus 5. Okay. And then when you pull out 2x minus 5, here you're left with x. Okay, so you're left with x. And then over here, when you pull out 2x minus 5, you're left with negative 3. So minus 3. So these are your two factors. So if I were to factor 2x squared minus 11x plus 15, I'll get 2x minus 5 times x minus 3. And that's your final. Okay, so here it is. So here's the slip and slide method. And we're going to use this procedure right here to work this out. So step number 1 is to slip. So step 1 is to take a to the end of the trinomial and then multiply that by c. So a is your leading coefficient, which is the coefficients of x squared. And we're going to take that to the end and we're going to times it by c. All right, so what do you get when you take 2 times 15? Well, 2 times 15 is 30. So we rewrite the new trinomial as x squared minus 11x. Now since we took 2 to the end and multiply that by 15, we get 30 for the new c. Okay, so we went from a polynomial where a is bigger than 1 into a polynomial where a is exactly 1. So it's a lot easier to factor this new polynomial, this new trinomial, okay, than the previous one. So how do we factor this basic trinomial? So first thing we have to do is write down c. So c is 30. Okay, so we have to come up with two numbers that when we multiply comes out to 30, but when we add those two numbers comes out to b, which is negative 11. So factors of 30, we can try 10 and 3. 10 times 3 is 30, but then 10 plus 3, if you add up, that's 13. So that one's no good. Okay, how about we try 6 and 5? Okay, 6 times 5 is 30, but then we take 6 plus 5, that comes out to 11, not negative 11, so that one's no good. How about we try negative 6 and then negative 5? Okay, so negative 6 times negative 5 is positive 30, but when you add those two numbers, you get negative 11. All right, so that one looks good. Okay. So now we found the two numbers, which is the negative 6 and negative 5. So we're going to use those two numbers and we're going to rewrite this using those two numbers, and we write it in factor form. So that would be x minus 6 times x take away 5. Okay, so that's step 2. All right, we factor the new trinomial. Step 3 is to divide both your factors by the value you took over in step 1. So what did we take over in step 1? Well, we took over the 2. So then we're going to have to divide the factors by 2. So we divide this by 2. And then we divide this by 2. Okay, so that's step 3. Now moving on to step 4 is to reduce the fractions and then slide any denominators up to the next variable. So we reduce the fraction. So 6/2 turns into a 3. So here you have x take away 3. And then here, -5/2 cannot be reduced. So you leave it alone. So that means x take away 5/2. So after you reduce, you are going to slide the denominator next to the variable. So this one, your denominator for this one is 1. So if you slide 1 in front of x, you're still going to get x. So no need to put that down. Now over here, your denominator is 2. So we were to slide that in front of x, we're going to get 2x. Take away 5. So your factor would be what? X minus 3. This one stays the same. Okay, and then over here, you get 2x. Take away 5. Okay? So when you factor 2x squared minus 11x plus 15 using the slip and slide method, you get x minus 3 times 2x take away 5. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Factoring trinomial when a is not 1. And we're going to go back and use the AC method to factor the 3x squared plus 2x minus 16. So here's the procedure of how to do it. So here we go. Let's go through this step by step. Step number 1 is to find the product of a and c. So basically you're taking a times c. So your a is positive 3, so you're going to take 3 and you're going to multiply that with negative 16. So a times c is negative 48. Okay, so that's step number 1. That's pretty easy. Step 2 is to find factors of AC. So you have to come up with two numbers that when you multiply, you get negative 48. But when you add the two numbers, it comes out to b, which is a positive 2. So alright, so here's negative 48. So we have to find two numbers that multiply to get negative 48. But when you add the two numbers, it comes out to positive 2. How about we try 6 and 8. 6, 8 is 48. Well, 6 times 8 is positive 48, so that's no good. How about we try negative 6 and positive 8? Well, negative 6 times positive 8 is negative 48. So that's good. Let's try to add these two numbers. So let's add them. So we add these up. Negative 6 plus 8 is 2. So yeah, that's what we're looking for. So these are the two numbers that we're looking for. Negative 6, positive 8. So that's step number 2. Step 3 is to rewrite the trinomial with 4 terms using those factors of AC. So we're going to use these two numbers, negative 6, okay, with the two numbers. So negative 6x plus 8x. And that comes out to equals to negative 16. So basically what we did is we rewrite a polynomial with 4 terms. Okay. The reason why we're doing that, so we can use grouping to factor this polynomial, because that's the method you would use to factor polynomial with 4 terms. It's the grouping method. Okay, so we're going to factor this by grouping. So that's step number 4, is to factor by grouping. So you have to group the first 2 terms and then the last 2 terms. So here's the first group, and then there's the other group. So what is the greatest common factor for 3x squared minus 6x? Well, you can pull out 3x. So if you pull out 3x, you're left with x minus 2. Because 3x goes into 3x squared x times, and then 3x goes into negative 6x 2 times negative 2. All right, over here, greatest common factor is a positive 8. So when you pull out positive 8, you're left with x minus 2. And you can tell if you're on the right track by checking the binomial. If you have the same binomial, then you're good. So look, you got x minus 2 and then x minus 2. Okay, so we're going to finish this up by factoring this polynomial. So what can we pull out from the expression? Well, we can pull out the common binomial factor, which is the x minus 2. Okay, so we'll pull out x minus 2. And then here, when you pull out my x minus 2, this is gone. Okay, you're left with 3x. So then you're left with 3x for that term. And then here, when you pull out the x minus 2, you're left with the 8. So plus 8. All right, so when you factor 3x squared plus 2x minus 16, you get x minus 2 times 3x plus 8. And that's the answer to it. Okay, so this is the same trinomial as the previous one, where we went on and used the AC method to factor it. So we're going to look at this again, but this time we're going to use the slip and slide. Okay, so here's the procedure of how to do it. Step 1 is to take a to the end of the trinomial and then multiply that by c. So take the a is the coefficients of x squared. All right, so we're going to take that to the end of the trinomial, and then we're going to multiply that by c. So 3 times negative 16, well, that's going to give you negative 48. Okay, so that's step number 1. Step 2, well, actually, after we multiply, we have to write out the new trinomial. So after you take the 3 over, multiply that by negative 16, you get a new trinomial, and that new trinomial is x squared plus 2x, okay, and then minus 48. So you get the negative 48 from 3 times negative 16. Okay, so that's step number 1. Step 2 is to factor this new basic trinomial. So here's the new trinomial. So we're going to go on and factor that. So to factor the new trinomial, you find your c. So c is negative 48. Okay, so now you have to come up with 2 numbers that when you multiply, you get negative 48. But when you add those 2 numbers, you get positive 2. All right, so factors of 48. Let's try 6 and 8. Okay, well, 6 times 8 is positive 48, so that's no good. How about we try negative 6 and then positive 8? Well, 6 negative. Okay, so negative 6 plus a is 2, and b is 2, so that's perfect. Okay, so these are the 2 numbers that we're looking for. All right, so that's step 2. Step 3 is to divide. Well, actually, we have to put it in factor form now. So it'll be x minus 6 times x plus 8. Okay? So when we factor this, we get Now step 3 is to divide both your factors by the value you took over in step 1. So what did we take over in step 1? We took over 3. So that means we're going to have to divide the factors by 3. So we take negative 6. Okay, negative 6 divided by 3. And then 8 divided by 3. Okay, and then after you divide, you are going to reduce it. So let's see what happened here. Then negative 6 over 3, that reduced to 2. And then 8 over 3 cannot be reduced. So that stays the same. X 8 over 3. Okay, and then after you reduce, you are going to take the denominator and move it with the variable. So here your denominator is 1, so we move that next to the variable, we get 1x, so that doesn't change anything because x itself is 1x. Now here, with the a over 3, okay, we're going to move the 3 with the variable, so that goes there. All right, so what do we have? We have final answer here. We have x minus 2. Okay. And then here, when we move the 3 with the x, we have 3x plus 8. Now, what I would like to hear from you down in the comment section is for you to tell me which of these methods you like and the reason for it. And then just to give me an idea of how many people out there really prefer to use the AC method or the slip and slide method. Okay, so if you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe down below. And I thank you so much for watching the video.